It was a tragedy that changed the world. And yet, in a small town on the edge of Newfoundland, it also became a story of hope. On September 11th, 2001, when U.S. airspace was suddenly closed, 38 planes were forced to land in Gander, Newfoundland. In a town of just 9,000 people, nearly 7,000 stranded passengers were welcomed with open arms. That incredible true story became the inspiration for Come From Away, a Canadian musical that went on to capture hearts around the world. Joining us now is Jillian Keiley, the artistic director for Come From Away, to reflect on the power of this story, how it continues to resonate over 20 years later, and what it means to retell it each night on stage. Jillian, thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks for the interview. I'm happy to talk about it.
Now, for those who might not be familiar, what is the story at the heart of Come From Away?
Well, the story is actually a tragedy, and we all know this tragedy. I think the story of 9/11 in 2001, and we the way we speak about our part of the story, because I'm from Newfoundland myself, so we call it our part of the story. But the way we talk about our part of the story is that it's not about 9/11; it's about 9/12. It's not. I think the day of 9/11 really has to be reserved for that grief and that tragedy and the commemoration of that time. What happened in Gander those years ago happened on 9/12 and the days following those 5 days that the world came to town, as was famously made into a book. And what happened was over 6,000, almost 7,000 people came to Gander and just landed in planes. The Gander had a population just over that amount, like including children and the elderly. So really, it was up to this very, very tiny town to take care of these people because they couldn't leave them on the planes for 5 days. But there was a lot of factors at play, including the fact that when the plane started to land, according to all sources, any one of those planes also could have a bomb on it. Nobody knew what the plan of the terrorists was. Was it to blow up several planes, any planes that was in the air? There were planes on their way to New York. There were planes on their way to the States. There were planes on the way to major centers. So it was the people involved who were in Newfoundland on the planes at those times, they had to stay on the plane. The plane landed and then just sat on the tarmac for a very long time. So we really get to hear that part of the story as well. And then Newfoundland's real big part in it came, Gander's big part in it, and other places where the plane people came. That happened quite late in the day, on the second day, quite, I guess, early in the morning on the second day. But people really were there for a very long time until they were even cleared to come off. And then when they came off, they weren't allowed to bring their own luggage. They had to come and they had nothing. So people were wearing people's clothes from the community. The community got together and made food. They made beds. People took people into their own homes. People had people over to dinner and sent them into the schools to sleep, and it was quite an emergency reaction for an emergency time, but it was also beautiful, and I think that's part of why I love doing the show. Just like Mr. Rogers said, you have to look for the helpers when you're talking about these big tragedies, and you're talking to children, but I think this applies to everybody. You have to find the helpers, or your heart can't bear it.
And in this show, how did you approach honoring a tragic moment while highlighting humanity and hope?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, some people look at, pictures of the Broadway production or our production and think, why are you celebrating? It's like, well, we actually really are very careful about that. All throughout the rehearsal process, we keep a candle burning the entire time that is there. The actors, crew, everybody takes care of that candle that is kept so that we're always constantly reminded that the reason that and this show is a kind of strange anomaly that happened 10 years after the fact. Everybody all but forgotten what had happened in Gander when Irene Sankoff and David Hine came to Newfoundland to interview people on this idea of a producer who now produces our show, Michael Rubinoff. So it was a surprise extra thing that happened was the show. Like the show didn't come right away; it came years and years later. But at the time, uh, what we saw was how we had to react and
Mhm.
how we had to help. And I think we keep that candle burning all the way through rehearsal, and in the show itself we give very special care, and the Broadway production does as well. It's very beautifully done. We give very special care to the grief that's carried in the show. The character of Hannah, who's real. Hannah just died this year. The character of Hannah, who's all of these stories are true. Hannah, who died this year, her son died as a firefighter in the thing. We take very good care of that story. We take very good care of the story of Ali, who is from Egypt, and he gets profiled and hauled out of the line and not allowed to carry his luggage. And we're very, very careful about how we treat those stories. So, the marketing of the show doesn't tend to include that, the tragic aspect, but a lot of people, when I see the reactions, or even, I go on social media and I say, what are people saying about Come From Away today? Um, People tell me they cry through the whole thing. I
Mhm.
read it all the time, that they just cry and cry and cry through the whole thing because the heartbreak is huge. The tragedy of what happened is huge, but all the way around it, it's so funny and loving and beautiful that people are able to take the tragedy in. And I think that's a lovely piece of art that David and Irene made, is something, because if it was all the tragedy of it, I don't think we could take it. I think we would turn away. And it's so beautifully handled. Um, and I think that's why the show just keeps going and going and going, because we want to commemorate this incredible moment that changed our world, but we can't quite take it at face value because it's too much. It's too hard to process. And we see that in our current world.
Mhm.
There's things that are going on that we can't even digest. And when it's filled with love and beauty around it, it makes it so that we can take it in. We can take it in.
And over 20 years later, why do you think that this story still resonates so deeply?
Yeah, well, I think anybody who was an adult at that time remembers a before and after
Mhm.
9/11. Everybody remembers where they were. We have that conversation as part of rehearsals every year. Where were you? How did it change you? Um, what do you think it did for people who lived in New York? There's a lot of I meet a ton of New Yorkers who come to Newfoundland to see this show, who were there at the time and who were scared, really scared. And I think that this is a blanket. And that's the theme of the show. The way we put the show together for our production, different from the Broadway one, which was, again, very beautiful. Our production does it a little bit different because we do it from the Newfoundland point of view, and we wrap a blanket around the audience. And it's quite literal, because the people of Gander and surrounding areas knit this beautiful blanket that goes right around the theater. There's 2,700 or 2,300 squares, these little granny squares,
Mhm.
that are knit into this big blanket, and it just goes right around the audience in a warm embrace, because that's what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to show the helpers.
And you mentioned this briefly, but how big of a role does the message of this production play into what we're seeing in the world right now?
I think anytime a piece of art helps, and this can be television, it can be theater. My
Mhm.
business is theater, and I think there is something very, especially, it gets in your heart in the theater, or any kind of live performance. But it is true, it happens on television, it happens on films, or anything that's happening in our culture. Anytime we push good into the world, and I tell the actors that, we talk about it every year, it's like, we are doing our job of pushing good into the world. There's so much. You work in news, you know it. There's so much bad. There's
Mhm.
so much bad, and the world is exposed to so much bad, 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 bad people, bad intentions, bad responses, things that were done for evil reasons, not to be too biblical about it, but things that were done for evil reasons, and to come back at it. And it's our job in the theater, and it's our job in the arts, to push against that and push good into the world, make people see the good, make people see how good people can be. And I'm so honored to work on this show. It obviously is very dear to my heart because it's in my beautiful home that I love.
Mhm.
But it's also so beautiful to see how the audience craves it. They need it. They need it. I love it.
Well, Jillian, thank you so much for the time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.